Do you understand what happens when a failed applicant coaches his child to tamper with company property? Marcus Vane's hand shot toward the wrinkled napkin in Lily Turner's fist, but Caleb stepped between them before the man could touch her. On the glass table, the bronze Mercer lock sat with its cracked green enamel tile glowing under the white lights. Lily lifted a blue marker, whispered, "Daddy." They turned it the wrong way, and drew 3 curved lines on the glass. The puzzle clicked open just as Dr. Evelyn Mercer entered, and the room forgot how to breathe. 40 minutes earlier, Caleb Turner had walked into Mercer Neurosystems carrying more than a resume. He carried a dented metal lunchbox for his daughter, a small toolbox with a cracked black handle, and the tired smell of machine oil that never fully left his cuffs no matter how carefully he washed them. The lobby floor was polished so bright it reflected the ceiling lights like a second sky, cold and perfect, the kind of place where men in expensive suits could pass a janitor, a guard, or a mechanic without ever really seeing a person. Lily walked close to his side, her backpack hanging from one shoulder, her blue marker tucked behind her ear like a carpenter's pencil. She was 10 years old, quiet in public, brave only in the small ways children are brave when they know their father is worried. Caleb had told her the school closure was an adventure. She knew it was not. The interview was their rent, their groceries, the late notices folded behind the coffee jar, and maybe the first steady breath he had taken since the factory let him go after the safety complaint nobody wanted to read. They were 10 steps from the elevators when a sharp metallic scatter broke across the marble. Small bronze pieces rolled under shoes and briefcases. A woman in a gray cardigan stood half-bent near the elevator doors, her silver bracelet snagged in the seam where the sliding panel met the wall. Her face had gone pale, one hand trembling around the broken body of an old puzzle box. People slowed just enough to look inconvenienced. One man stepped over a fallen piece without pausing. Caleb saw the woman swallow hard, saw the tiny shine of sweat at her temple, saw the bracelet tighten each time the elevator tried to close. "Hold still, ma'am," he said softly. He set down his toolbox, pressed the elevator open with his shoulder, and took out the smallest screwdriver he owned. The woman looked embarrassed before she looked grateful. "I'm fine," she murmured. "Usually means you're not," Caleb said. His hands moved gently, not fast, not showy. He freed the bracelet, picked up each bronze piece, and placed them on a clean square of napkin from Lily's lunchbox. One piece had a cracked green enamel tile, shaped almost like a tiny wounded window. Lily noticed it before anyone else did. She crouched beside the napkin, drawing 3 little curves around the shape while Caleb tightened a bent latch on the puzzle's side. The woman's fingers shook again. Lily opened the lunchbox and looked at the single sandwich wrapped in foil. Caleb saw the question in his daughter's eyes, and the ache behind it. He gave the woman the cleaner half. "Hard things solve easier when your hands stop shaking," he said. The woman said her name was Eve. Nothing more. Across the lobby, near the security desk, Marcus Vane watched Caleb's screwdriver touch the bronze lock, then looked down at his phone and typed a message with one careful thumb. "Move him up. I want to see this one myself." Marcus Vane sent the message, slipped the phone back into his jacket, and smiled like a man who had simply adjusted a calendar. By the time Caleb Turner reached the reception desk, the interview that had been scheduled for 11 had been moved to 9:20, and nobody explained why. The receptionist handed him a visitor badge with only his last name printed on it. Turner in block letters, no first name, no title, no courtesy. "They're ready for you upstairs," she said. Caleb glanced down at Lily, then at the half-empty lunchbox in her hands. "Can my daughter wait near reception?" "Company policy," the receptionist replied, already looking past him. "Minors must remain with their guardian." A security camera above the elevators tilted with a faint mechanical whir, following them as the doors opened. The elevator smelled of lemon, cleaner and expensive cologne, and Caleb saw his reflection in the brushed steel wall. Brown suit jacket too old in the shoulders, white shirt pressed but thinning at the collar, work boots polished as well as they could be polished, a toolbox hanging at his side like evidence from a life the building had already judged. Lily stood close enough that her sleeve touched his wrist. She still had the blue marker behind one ear, and the napkin with her little green tile drawing was folded carefully inside the lunchbox, beside the remaining crust of bread. Caleb adjusted the visitor badge so it sat straight. He did not want Lily to remember him looking ashamed. The 38th floor opened into glass, carpet, and silence. A young assistant with nervous eyes met them by a frosted door marked Executive Hiring Committee. Her name badge read Dana. She looked at Caleb's toolbox, then at Lily, then down at the tablet in her hands as if hoping the screen would tell her what kind of kindness was allowed here. "Mr. Turner," she said softly. "Mr. Vane asked that we begin immediately." "Of course. You brought tools?" "Habit," Caleb said. "I came from a morning repair." "And the child?" The question did not come from Dana. Marcus Vane stood inside the room, tall, tailored. His silver tie clipped perfectly beneath a smile that made every insult sound pre-approved. Caleb's hand settled lightly on Lily's shoulder. "Her school closed for a waterline break. I called ahead." Marcus blinked as though Caleb had brought in rain. "Yes, we saw the note." He stepped aside with generous theatrical patience. "We are a family-friendly company. Please, come in." The room was too bright. White lights washed the long glass table until every fingerprint looked like a flaw. Two executives sat on one side with coffee cups and open laptops. Dana took a chair near the wall. At the center of the table sat Caleb's printed resume, already marked with red tabs. Near it, strangely out of place, rested the bronze puzzle box from the lobby, the Mercer lock, its cracked green enamel tile turned toward the windows. Caleb noticed it but said nothing. Lily noticed it and stopped swinging her feet before she had even sat down. Marcus did not begin with the job. He began with the absence of polish. "Caleb Turner," he said, folding his hands. 39. Field maintenance. Robotics plant background. No bachelor's degree. One of the executives clicked a pen. The sound was small, but in the glass room it landed hard. "Widower," Marcus continued, glancing briefly at Lily as if grief were an inconvenience in the file. "Single parent. Employment gap. Terminated after an internal safety complaint." Caleb's jaw moved once. Not anger, restraint. The complaint was about a stabilizer failure. "We'll get there," Marcus said gently, which meant they would not. Lily looked up at her father. Caleb gave her the smallest nod, the kind he used at grocery stores when the card reader took too long and there was a line behind them. "Stay steady. Stay kind. Stay here." Marcus slid a page across the table with 2 fingers. "Our concern is culture alignment." "Yes, sir. This role supports executive operations." "I understand. It requires judgment." The second executive looked at Caleb's cuffs. There was a faint shadow of old machine oil near one seam, washed almost clean but not invisible. "Sometimes," she said, smiling as if offering advice, "people with hands-on backgrounds struggle with corporate discretion." Caleb did not look at the stain. He looked at her eyes. "Hands-on work teaches discretion, ma'am. Machines don't forgive pride." The pen stopped clicking. For half a breath, nobody moved. Even Marcus seemed to hear something in the calmness of that answer that did not match the file he had prepared. Then he smiled again and made the moment smaller. "That's a nice phrase." He tapped the red tab on Caleb's resume. "But this is not a factory floor." Lily's fingers tightened around the lunchbox handle. The metal gave a tiny creak. Caleb reached down, loosened her grip with his thumb, and whispered, "Easy, sweetheart." Marcus turned that tenderness into evidence. "And this is part of what I mean. We cannot have personal complications interfering with operational trust." Dana's eyes flicked up, troubled, then down again. Caleb inhaled slowly through his nose. He could smell coffee, printer toner, and the cold chemical polish on the table. He wanted to explain the rent, the school closure, the safety report, the foreman who told him to keep quiet because recalls were expensive. But explaining too much in rooms like this only gave people more rope to tie around your dignity. So he folded his hands. "My daughter being here is on me," he said. "Not on her." Marcus leaned back, satisfied, as if he had just proven a theory. "Responsible answer." Then he took a red pen, drew a small box beside the words culture risk, and checked it before the interview had truly begun. On the table, the Mercer lock sat under the white light, the cracked green tile facing the wrong way, and Lily's eyes moved from the red mark on her father's file to the puzzle box as if one broken thing had quietly recognized another. The cracked green tile on the Mercer lock had not looked broken to Lily the first time she saw it. Downstairs, 40 minutes before Marcus Vane checked the red box marked Culture Risk, it had looked lonely. Caleb noticed her staring at it now in the glass room, her small eyes moving between the puzzle and his rejected file, and the memory came back to him with the cold clarity of lobby marble under his knees. The morning had already been heavy when they entered Mercer Neurosystems. Rainwater clung to the bottoms of Caleb's work boots, leaving faint half-moons on the polished floor that he tried to wipe away with the side of his soul. He hated bringing the outside in. He hated looking like exactly what men in places like this expected him to be. A man from the service entrance. A man who fixed things no one wanted to touch. A man whose hands carried the history of engines, loose wiring, burned bearings, and unpaid bills. Lily held the metal lunchbox with both hands, the way she carried anything important. Inside was one turkey sandwich, cut unevenly because Caleb had made it before dawn after checking the rent notice twice and deciding, quietly, not to let his daughter see him fold it behind the coffee jar. Her blue marker was tucked behind her ear. His wife's old watch sat on his wrist, the glass cracked across the face like a tiny frozen lightning strike. The watch still ran 5 minutes slow. Caleb never corrected it. Some grief, he believed, deserved to keep its own time. They were crossing the lobby when the elevator doors chimed, then stuttered, then tried to close on a woman's silver bracelet. The sound was small, a sharp scrape of metal against metal, but Caleb heard it the way mechanics hear trouble before it becomes damage. A woman in a gray cardigan jerked her hand back, but the bracelet caught in the seam. At the same moment, the bronze puzzle box she carried slipped from under her arm and struck the marble. Pieces scattered in every direction. A man with a leather briefcase sighed and stepped around them. A young employee looked up from her phone, saw the woman's pale face, and chose not to get involved. The elevator gave another impatient chime. "Don't pull," Caleb said, already moving. The woman looked embarrassed, then frightened that she had been seen needing help. "I'm okay." "Not yet," Caleb said. "But you will be." He set his toolbox down, guided Lily behind the yellow line near the elevator threshold, and pressed his shoulder against the door so it would stop fighting the bracelet. His fingers opened the small screwdriver pouch by habit. No flourish, no announcement. Just the careful motion of a man who had spent his life keeping bad seconds from becoming permanent ones. "Daddy?" Lily whispered. "Her hand is shaking." Caleb saw it too. Not dramatic, not helpless, just a tremor she was trying to hide with pride. "Ma'am, I'm going to loosen the clasp, not the bracelet," he said. "You'll feel a little pressure, then it'll let go." She nodded, eyes fixed on his hands. The lobby smelled of lemon wax, wet wool, coffee from the kiosk near security, and the faint electrical heat of elevators working too hard. Caleb turned the screwdriver one slow quarter at a time. The bracelet slipped free. The woman pulled her wrist to her chest as if he had handed her back more than jewelry. "Thank you," she breathed. "People usually just press the close door button." Caleb gave the smallest smile. "People get busy." He did not say cruel. He did not say blind. Lily was already crouching near the fallen pieces, but she waited for his nod before touching anything. Caleb liked that about her. Curious, not careless. Together they gathered the bronze fragments onto a clean napkin from the lunchbox. One piece rolled beneath the security desk, and when Caleb bent to retrieve it, he noticed Marcus Vane standing nearby with a paper coffee cup in his hand, watching without the expression of a man watching an accident, watching like a man measuring a risk. Caleb looked away first. In buildings like this, staring back at power rarely helped. The puzzle box itself had a bent latch and one cracked green enamel square near the corner. Caleb picked it up, felt the catch drag under his thumb, and understood at once why it had spilled open in the wrong way. "Latch is sprung," he said. "I can straighten it enough so it holds." You don't have to, the woman said quickly. It looks old. Old doesn't mean finished. Lily looked at him then, because she knew he was not just talking about the box. Caleb took the smallest pliers from his kit, wrapped the latch with a corner of the napkin so he would not scratch the bronze, and eased the metal back into alignment. His hands were rough, but they moved gently. That was the lesson he had tried to teach Lily since her mother died. Strength was not how hard you could grip something. Sometimes strength was knowing how not to leave a mark. The woman's breathing steadied, then faltered again. Caleb saw the color drain from her lips. Lily opened the lunchbox without being asked. She looked at the sandwich, then at the woman, then at her father with the solemn generosity of a child deciding whether hunger could wait. Caleb tore the sandwich in half, chose the cleaner half with more turkey, wrapped it in foil and offered it. Hard things solve easier when your hands stop shaking. The woman stared at the food like it was too simple to accept. I can pay you. It's lunch, Caleb said. Not an invoice. She took it with both hands. I'm Eve. Caleb, this is Lily. Lily lifted her marker and drew the cracked green tile on the napkin, adding 3 curved lines around it because patterns calmed her. Eve noticed the drawing, but before she could ask, Marcus's voice floated in from behind them, smooth and warm enough to pass for kindness. Mr. Turner, is it? We can take you early. Caleb closed his toolbox, wiped the bronze dust from his fingers, and handed the repaired puzzle back to Eve without knowing her last name, her title, or the weight of the company hidden behind her tired eyes. Across the lobby, the security camera blinked red above them, quietly recording the sandwich, the screwdriver, the napkin, and the moment a small act of kindness first touched the lock that would later open the truth. The very kindness Caleb had offered downstairs became Marcus Vane's first accusation. The bronze Mercer lock sat open on the glass table, its tiny inner teeth exposed like a secret mouth, while Lily's blue marker trembled in her hand. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Men like him knew how to make a room colder with polished words. Dr. Mercer, he said, turning toward Evelyn with a practiced look of concern. Before anyone mistakes this for brilliance, I should note that Mr. Turner handled that object in the lobby. There is a very real possibility of tampering. The word landed harder than shouting would have. Tampering. Caleb felt Lily shrink behind his sleeve. Her lunchbox touched the leg of her chair with a soft metal tap, and the napkin she had drawn on wrinkled in her small fist. Evelyn Mercer stood near the doorway in her gray cardigan, no longer looking like a tired woman in a lobby, but not yet looking fully like the CEO everyone feared. Her eyes moved from the open box to Caleb's toolbox, from Caleb's washed but rough hands to Lily's frightened face, then to Marcus. She had been helped by this man less than an hour earlier. She had accepted his daughter's sandwich. But she was also the head of a company where a single staged moment could become a lawsuit, a leak, a boardroom disaster by noon. No one touches the box, Evelyn said. Her voice was low, controlled, and it made the room obey. Marcus gave a small nod, as though the command had been his idea. Of course, preserve the evidence. Caleb heard it then, the tiny turn in the phrase. Evidence. Marcus had gone from company. Property to evidence before legal had been called, before security had reviewed anything, before Evelyn herself had named a concern. Caleb did not point it out. Not yet. He only placed his palm gently over Lily's hand so the marker stopped rattling against the table. Breathe slow, he whispered. You didn't do wrong. Lily's eyes shone, but she nodded. Dana, the young assistant by the wall, looked as if she wanted to say something and had been trained not to. One of the executives closed her laptop halfway. The hinge made a soft click that echoed strangely after the puzzle's louder one. Marcus turned to Dana. Pull the lobby camera, the one near elevator bank C, and the conference room feed from before the interview. Then, almost too quickly, he added, we should also remove the child from the room. For her comfort. Caleb looked up. She stays where I can see her. Marcus smiled with patience sharpened at the edges. Mr. Turner, nobody is threatening your daughter. Then nobody needs to take her. Silence stretched over the table. It was not victory. It was not even defiance. It was a father placing one simple boundary in a room that had already taken too many liberties. Evelyn watched that boundary land. Something in her face shifted. Not trust exactly, but attention. Lily can sit beside her father, she said. Dana, water please. Marcus's jaw tightened for only a second, so quickly most people would have missed it. Caleb did not. Mechanics noticed small misalignments because small misalignments became failures. Dana brought a paper cup of water. Lily held it with both hands. The blue marker lay beside the napkin now, its cap slightly loose, a dot of ink staining the table like a tiny bruise. Evelyn stepped closer to the Mercer lock but did not touch it. Mr. Turner, she said, still formal, still guarded. Did you alter this box in the lobby? Caleb met her eyes. He could have reminded her that her hand had been shaking. He could have said she had eaten his daughter's sandwich. He could have asked why she had not told him who she was. Instead, he chose the narrow bridge of truth. I straightened a bent latch so the pieces wouldn't fall out again. Didn't open it. You expect us to take that on your word? Marcus asked. Caleb looked at him. No, sir. That's what cameras are for. For the first time, Marcus did not immediately answer. The conference room screen woke with a pale blue glow, painting everyone's faces in the same cold light. Dana mirrored the security footage from the lobby first. There was Caleb kneeling by the elevator, his shoulder holding the door, his hands working slowly at Evelyn's bracelet. There was Lily setting the bronze pieces on a napkin. There was the sandwich torn in half and wrapped in foil. There was Caleb returning the puzzle to Eve without keeping so much as a piece. The room watched the kindness in silence, but Evelyn did not soften completely. She leaned closer. Run the conference feed. The screen changed. Now the table appeared empty. Then Marcus entered alone before the interview, coffee cup in one hand, file folder in the other. He set Caleb's resume down. He placed the Mercer lock near the center of the table. Then his cuff crossed the frame. At 9 hours 23 minutes and 14 seconds, he turned the cracked green tile toward the windows. At 9 hours 23 minutes and 18 seconds, he nudged the box 1 inch closer to Caleb's chair. Lily looked at the screen and whispered, not accusing, not dramatic, just certain in the way children are certain when adults complicate what they saw. It was already turned. Marcus exhaled through his nose. I arranged the room. That's hardly suspicious. Why that way? Caleb asked. It was the first question he had asked all morning that was not about protecting his daughter. No one answered. The air conditioner hummed inside the wall. Outside the glass, Columbus looked clean and distant, unaware that one cracked green tile had made a powerful man move too fast. Evelyn turned her head slowly toward Marcus. He recovered with a gentle laugh. Dr. Mercer, with respect, we are discussing a decorative legacy object and a contaminated napkin. Dana's fingers froze over the keyboard. Evelyn noticed. Caleb noticed too. Legal had not arrived. Security had not labeled anything. Yet Marcus had used the word contaminated as if the napkin in Lily's hand had already become the thing he feared most. And under the white conference lights, the 3 blue curves Lily had drawn on that napkin lined up almost perfectly with the hidden grooves inside the open lock. Evelyn Mercer did not touch the napkin at first. She only looked at it the way a person looks at a crack in a wall and realizes the whole house may have shifted around it. 3 blue curves, drawn by a child on paper softened by sandwich crumbs, sat almost perfectly over the hidden grooves inside the Mercer lock. Nobody in the room laughed now, but nobody apologized either. Suspicion had not left. It had merely changed shape. Marcus Vane folded his hands on the glass table and lowered his voice into something almost tender. Dr. Mercer, I would urge caution. A frightened child can see patterns anywhere, especially when her father's future is on the line. Lily's shoulders rose toward her ears. Caleb felt it before he saw it, that small retreat children make when adults turn them into arguments. He moved the lunchbox closer to her knees, not to hide her, but to give her something familiar to hold. She doesn't have to perform for anybody, he said. This is not a performance, Evelyn replied, though her eyes stayed on Marcus. It is a verification. She turned to Dana. Call archives. I want the museum replica brought up from the founder's display cabinet. Chain of custody. 2 witnesses. No one wipes this table. Dana stood so fast her chair legs whispered against the carpet. Marcus's smile remained, but his fingers pressed once against his thumb, hard enough to pale the skin. That seems unnecessary for a decorative object. Evelyn looked at him. Then it should be easy. The room settled into a waiting silence. Outside the glass wall, traffic crawled far below like nothing had happened. Inside, the air conditioner clicked on and began its steady breath through the ceiling vents. Caleb could hear Lily sipping water from the paper cup Dana had brought her. He could hear one executive tapping an anxious nail against a ceramic coffee mug, then stopping when she realized the sound was too loud. Caleb kept his hands folded. He did not look at the open puzzle like a prize. He looked at Lily. You okay? He whispered. She nodded, but the nod was too quick. Daddy, I didn't mean to make trouble. You didn't make trouble, he said. You noticed something. Is that bad? Only to people who needed it missed. Marcus's eyes flicked toward him. There was a warning there, polished and quiet. Caleb let it pass. He had learned a long time ago that some men wanted you angry because anger made you easier to dismiss. He would not give Marcus that gift, not in front of his daughter. When Dana returned, she was not alone. An older archives manager followed her, wearing white cotton gloves and carrying a clear acrylic case. Behind them came a security supervisor with a tablet. The replica inside the case looked almost identical to the Mercer lock. Same bronze panels, same delicate seams, same square of green enamel in the corner. But its green tile was whole, smooth, uncracked, and pointed in a slightly different direction. The archives manager set it down with careful reverence. Founder display replica, she said, catalogued as non-functional. No internal compartment. Evelyn nodded. Place it beside the original. Marcus raised one palm. If we're going to continue involving the child, I'd like to note for the record that this environment may be emotionally coercive. Caleb's hand tightened once on the edge of his chair, then relaxed. Then stop making her the problem, he said. The words were soft, but they landed with weight. Evelyn glanced at him, and for the first time her expression held something more than caution. Not belief. Respect, maybe small and reluctant like a light behind a closed door. Lily, Evelyn said, lowering herself slightly so she was not towering over the girl. You do not have to solve anything, but if you want to tell me what you saw, you may. Lily looked at Caleb. He did not nod yes. He did not push. He only opened his palm on the table. Choice. Lily took a breath, picked up her blue marker and pointed first to the replica, then to the real lock. That one's smooth, she said. This one is pretending. One of the executives frowned. Pretending? Lily's cheeks reddened. Like when you put a sticker over a rip in a book. It still bends wrong. Nobody spoke. Caleb's face softened with pain and pride at the same time. That was Lily's world. Broken book covers, school folders repaired with tape, jeans patched at the knee because new ones could wait until payday. She was not decoding corporate secrets. She was recognizing the grammar of things adults tried to hide. Evelyn slid the real lock and the replica under the white light at the center of the table without touching the inner mechanism. Show me without opening it. Lily leaned forward, then stopped. Can Daddy stand there? She pointed to a spot 3 steps back from the table, near the wall. He makes the room quieter. Marcus gave a small laugh. That is not exactly a controlled condition. Caleb stood before anyone argued. 3 steps, he said. He moved back, slowly, visibly, hands open at his sides. Then he remembered the watch on his wrist, the cracked face catching the overhead light. He slipped it off and placed it on the table near Lily, far from the puzzle. Your mom used to say straight lines get nervous too, he murmured. Lily put 2 fingers on the old watch and steadied. She did not open the lock. She did not twist hidden dials like a magician. She only tilted the real one slightly toward the window, then tilted the replica the same way. The replica reflected nothing but light. The original caught the beam on the cracked green tile and threw a thin line across the glass. At first it looked like a scratch. Then Dana gasped. Letters, tiny and pale, appeared in the reflection near the edge of Caleb's rejected resume. MNSP-17/Pediatric Stabilizer Original Path. Evelyn's hand came down slowly onto the table, not touching the light, only bracing herself beside it. The executive who had questioned Caleb's cuffs stopped breathing loudly through her nose. The coffee mug sat untouched. The room had become so quiet that the hum inside the walls sounded like a machine deciding whether to fail. Marcus moved. It was almost nothing. A neat step forward. A file lifted with professional urgency. A smile offered to soften the motion. Let me clear the surface so we can document this properly. He placed the folder directly over the reflected code. Caleb saw Lily flinch as the letters vanished. He did not reach for Marcus. He did not accuse. He simply asked, "How did you know where to cover it?" Marcus froze for less than a second, but less than a second was enough. Evelyn saw it too. Dana saw it. Even the archives manager looked up from her gloves. Marcus recovered with a quiet chuckle. "Mr. Turner, please don't dramatize ordinary caution. That code is obsolete." The word hung in the chilled air. Obsolete. No one had read the code aloud. Evelyn's face changed then, not into trust, not into anger, but into recognition sharp enough to cut through every polite lie in the room. "Dana," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Pause the launch rehearsal. Pull the MNSP-17 archive. Full access logs. Engineering, legal, safety now." Marcus's smile remained on his mouth, but it had left his eyes. Caleb stepped back to Lily's side and put the watch gently into her palm. He would not let them turn his daughter into a weapon, even if her small drawing had just opened the first real door. On the glass table, beneath the file Marcus had moved too quickly to place, the hidden code waited in the light like something buried alive, and for the first time Evelyn Mercer looked at the old bronze lock not as a memory of her father, but as a warning he had left behind. The hidden code did not look dangerous at first. It looked fragile. Pale letters floating on a glass table under a folder Marcus Vane had moved too quickly. MNSP-17/Pediatric Stabilizer Original Path. But the moment Evelyn Mercer said the words, "full access logs," the room changed. Not loudly, not with panic. The shift was quieter than that, the way a hospital corridor changes when a doctor stops smiling before he speaks. Dana's tablet chimed twice. The conference screen split into 3 windows. Archive search, engineering records, and a gray loading wheel that seemed to turn too slowly for everyone's breathing. Marcus kept his hands folded, but Caleb noticed the small shine at his hairline, the way his thumb rubbed the side of his phone inside his jacket pocket without pulling it out. "Dr. Mercer," Marcus said, his voice still smooth, "we have a launch. Rehearsal in less than an hour. Whatever this obsolete code refers to can be reviewed properly after the event." Evelyn did not look at him. If it concerns a child-facing device, after the event is too late. Lily sat beside Caleb with the cracked watch in both hands. No longer drawing, no longer whispering. Caleb could feel how badly she wanted the adults to stop making the air heavy. He wanted that too. He wanted to take her downstairs, buy her a vending machine hot chocolate, tell her she had done enough. But the code on the table had opened a door, and some doors, once opened, became responsibilities. The archive loaded with a soft electronic tone. At the top of the screen was an old Mercer Neurosystems logo, not the sleek blue one used on the brochures downstairs, but a simpler mark, 2 hands cupping a small green line. Evelyn's face tightened. "That was my father's pre-merger mark," she said, almost to herself. No one in the room moved. The word father landed differently than CEO. It made the bronze lock on the table feel less like company property and more like a letter from the dead. Dana opened the file. 2 diagrams appeared side by side. On the left, original path. On the right, launch path. To an executive eye, they looked nearly identical, elegant curves and labeled nodes, green and silver lines flowing through a pediatric stabilizer assembly. To Caleb, they did not look identical at all. His gaze went to the load channel, the shortened brace, the corner where vibration would gather when a small body moved unexpectedly, when a parent lifted too fast, when real life entered a clean demonstration. He did not speak right away. He had learned the cost of being first to say what powerful people wanted last. Evelyn saw him staring. "Mr. Turner?" Caleb swallowed. The old factory came back to him in pieces. The smell of hot rubber, the foreman's ring tapping on a clipboard, a machine arm shuddering half an inch out of rhythm, the email he sent at 2:14 a.m. because he could not sleep knowing a stabilizer had been swapped for a cheaper part. Then the termination notice. Then the silence from men who called themselves practical. He looked at Lily before he answered, because every truth he spoke in this room would become part of what she remembered about courage. "I'm not a medical engineer," he said. Marcus exhaled, almost relieved. Caleb continued, "But I know load paths, and I know what happens when somebody shortens one to make a unit look cleaner on paper." Evelyn's eyes stayed on him. "Explain it simply." Caleb stepped no closer to the table. He pointed only with 2 fingers, careful not to touch the screen. "Original path lets stress travel around the child's movement. Launch path sends it through this brace. It'll pass a staged demo. It might pass a COM clinic test. But under repeated use, if the stabilizer heats, loosens, or gets adjusted by a tired parent, it could drift." One executive shifted in her chair. The leather gave a low creak, then stopped. Marcus smiled with polite sorrow. "A terminated mechanic is not a clinical authority." Caleb nodded once. "That's true." The honesty took some of the force out of the insult. "So don't take it from me. Check the service logs." Evelyn turned to Dana. "Pull them." Marcus lifted a hand. "Engineering logs require context." "Then we'll get context." The printer in the corner woke and began spitting out pages, each sheet sliding into the tray with a dry whisper. Service log. Change order. Beta clinic incident ticket. Supplier adjustment. The words arrived one by one, ordinary enough to hide behind. Dana read the first ticket aloud, her voice thinning. Minor user adjustment. Unit drifted during pediatric mobility trial. Resolved on site. The second said nearly the same. The third used softer language. Caregiver handling variance. Caleb stared at that phrase. He had seen words like that before. Blame the user. Blame the parent. Blame the worker. Blame the person with the least power to rewrite the report. Lily reached into the side pocket of Caleb's worn folder, the one he had brought for references and old certifications, and pulled out a folded repair receipt he had kept for years because he could never quite let go of proof. "Daddy?" she said quietly. "Is this the same letters?" Caleb looked down. His stomach tightened. The receipt was creased at the corners, stained faintly with oil, dated 2 years earlier from the robotics plant. MS-17B stabilizer replacement. Below it, in Caleb's own handwriting, was a note he had made after the failure. Shortened brace overheats under repeated load. He had kept it not because he thought anyone would care, but because some part of him needed evidence that he had not imagined the truth. Marcus leaned forward. "That is unrelated industrial paperwork." "Maybe," Caleb said. He did not raise his voice. "But if the supplier is the same, it's worth checking." Evelyn's gaze moved to Dana before Marcus could speak. "Supplier invoices. Cross-reference MS-17B with MNSP-17. Dana typed. The keyboard sounded too loud now, each stroke a small hammer. Marcus finally pulled his phone halfway from his pocket, saw Evelyn watching, and slid it back in. "This is becoming speculative," he said. "We are minutes from an event involving investors, physicians, families. We should not create fear based on a child's drawing and an applicant's old grievance." Caleb felt the word grievance cut, but he did not let it show. Revenge would have been easy here. He could have told them exactly what it felt like to lose a job for telling the truth, to sit in a truck outside a school with no idea how to explain to your daughter that doing right had made dinner smaller. Instead, he put the repair receipt flat on the table, smoothed its creases with 2 fingers, and pushed it toward Evelyn. "Don't use it to believe me," he said. "Use it to check me." Evelyn looked at the receipt, then at the service tickets, then at the Mercer lock resting open under the cold white light. The pieces were not a verdict yet, but they had become too aligned to dismiss. Dana's screen pinged again. Her lips parted. "Supplier match," she said. "Same subcontractor. Different division." Marcus spoke too quickly. "Subcontractors serve multiple clients. That proves nothing." Evelyn finally turned toward him. "You said you didn't know the technical change." "I don't manage engineering." "Then why is your signature on the compliance review?" Dana had opened the approval packet. There it was, clean and digital, Marcus Vane approved for. Child-facing launch language. Beneath the signature was a phrase highlighted in corporate blue. Emphasized gentle hands, family trust, reduced anxiety. Evelyn's face went still. Caleb watched something painful move behind her eyes, because gentle hands had not come from marketing. It was carved inside her father's lock. Marcus adjusted his cuff. "Language review is not safety approval." "But it helped sell safety," Caleb said. Marcus looked at him then, and for the first time the mask did not fully settle back into place. Outside the room, a distant swell of applause rose from the launch hall as guests began taking their seats. Families, reporters, board members, children whose parents had been promised compassion through innovation. Evelyn listened to that applause fade through the glass, then looked at the open lock, the receipt, the incident tickets, and the approval packet spread across the table like pieces of a map no one could fold away again. "This is no longer an interview matter," she said, "and it will not be handled behind a closed door." The launch hall on the 38th floor had been built to make doubt feel unreasonable. White chairs lined up in perfect rows. Blue lights washed the stage. A glass display case held the pediatric stabilizer beneath a banner that read "Compassion through Innovation." And on the front row sat board members, physicians, investors, and parents who had come with photographs of children tucked into purses and jacket pockets like prayers. Caleb Turner entered through the side aisle with Lily's hand in his, not as a man vindicated, not as a man invited to applause, but as a father still wearing the same old brown suit that had been judged unworthy less than an hour before. His toolbox hung at his side. The cracked watch was back on his wrist. Lily carried the metal lunchbox against her chest, and inside it, folded small, was the napkin with 3 blue curves that had started all of this. Evelyn Mercer walked several steps ahead of them, no longer in the posture of the tired woman from the lobby, but not hiding behind power either. She looked pale under the stage lights, as if the building she owned had become heavier with every door she opened. Marcus Vane was already at the podium. He had moved faster than truth. His silver tie caught the light, his smile held steady, and his voice floated over the audience with calm, generous warmth. "Today is about trust," he said. "Trust between science and family. Trust between innovation and compassion. Trust that every child deserves technology built with gentle hands." Evelyn stopped at the edge of the stage when she heard the phrase. Caleb saw it hit her. Gentle hands. The words carved inside her father's lock, now polished into marketing. Marcus continued before the pause could become visible. "Unfortunately, moments before this event, a personnel matter involving a rejected applicant created confusion around internal documents. I want to assure our families, our partners, and our board that Mercer Neurosystems remains committed to process, safety, and emotional care." A murmur moved through the room. Rejected applicant. Caleb felt the label turn heads toward him before anyone knew his name. Lily squeezed his hand. He squeezed back once. Not hard, just enough to tell her he was still there. Marcus lifted one hand toward Caleb with the practiced sorrow of a man pretending not to accuse. "We also have a minor child involved, and out of respect for her emotional safety, I have recommended this matter be handled privately." It almost worked. The sentence was gentle. The stage was bright. The parents in the front row did not know Caleb. They did not know about the lobby, the sandwich, the open lock, the 3 incident tickets softened into harmless language. To them, Marcus sounded like the adult in the room. Evelyn stepped onto the stage. She did not take the podium from him. She stood beside it, leaving the microphone between them like a line neither could cross without choosing who they were. "Then we will handle it carefully," she said. But not privately. The room shifted. Cameras near the back adjusted with small mechanical clicks. Marcus gave her a quiet smile. Dr. Mercer, I'm not sure this is the appropriate venue. This venue is where the product was going to be introduced to families, Evelyn said. If there is a safety question, it belongs where the promise was made. She turned to Dana, who stood near the control booth with a tablet hugged to her chest. Play the first clip. The screen behind the stage changed from the company logo to the lobby security feed. There was Caleb on one knee beside the elevator, holding the door with his shoulder, freeing the silver bracelet from the seam. There was Lily placing bronze pieces onto a napkin. There was the sandwich torn and offered. There was Eve, not yet Dr. Mercer to him, accepting help from a man who had no reason to expect anything in return. The room grew quieter, but Marcus was ready. No one disputes that Mr. Turner was courteous, he said. The concern is that he handled a founder artifact before it later became part of a disruption. He had framed kindness as access. A few heads nodded. It was a clever turn, clean enough to pass for reason. Evelyn did not fight the frame with emotion. Second clip. The screen showed the conference room before Caleb entered. Marcus appeared alone, set the Mercer lock on the glass table, and turned the cracked green tile toward the windows. Then he nudged it closer to Caleb's assigned chair. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 9 hours 23 minutes and 18 seconds. Caleb stood at the edge of the aisle, feeling the old urge to explain himself rise in his throat. He swallowed it. His job was not to win the room. His job was to keep the truth from being buried beneath manners. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. I arranged the room for an interview. That is routine. The object was already present as part of Founder Heritage decor. Evelyn looked toward the display case. Then you won't mind if we show the third clip. On the screen, the conference feed jumped forward to the moment the micro-etched code reflected across the table. Marcus's folder moved, precise and quick, covering the letters before anyone had read them aloud. Eminus, P17 vanished under corporate paper. This time, the audience did not murmur. They held still. A physician in the second row lowered his program. A mother with a photo in her lap looked up slowly. Marcus's smile thinned but did not break. Again, documentation protocol. Reflective surfaces create confusion. I was preventing contamination of the record. Caleb heard the word again. Contamination. The same word from the conference room. Same tone. Same too early certainty. Evelyn turned not to Marcus but to Caleb. Mr. Turner, say only what you know. Caleb stepped forward just enough for his voice to carry without needing the microphone. Lily stayed behind him, safe in the shadow of his shoulder. I know he covered the code before anyone read it out loud, Caleb said. I know my daughter drew a shape. I know adults are responsible for what they did with it. Marcus's head turned sharply. That is an unfair insinuation. Caleb looked at him with a tired steadiness that made the words heavier, not louder. This isn't for revenge. It's so the truth doesn't get buried one more time. Evelyn nodded once to Dana. The screen changed again, not to accusation but to documents in sequence. The MNSP17 archive page, the original path, the launch path, then 3 beta clinic incident tickets marked minor user adjustment. Marcus saw the audience reading now, really reading, and shifted tactics. His voice softened toward the parents. Prototype language can be alarming out of context. These beta reports were non-clinical and resolved on site. Dana looked up from the control booth. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I had not released the contents of those tickets yet. The room caught that. Not fully, not loudly, but the sentence opened a hairline crack through Marcus's calm. He blinked once. I was briefed generally. Caleb saw his hand move toward his phone, then stop when the stage camera angled toward him. Lily tugged gently on Caleb's sleeve. He bent down. She opened the lunchbox, took out the folded napkin, and whispered, Daddy, it matches the long green road. Not a diagnosis, not an accusation. A child describing what she could see. Caleb accepted the napkin and held it out to Evelyn, not to the cameras. Evelyn unfolded it carefully and placed it beside the projected original path on the podium monitor. The 3 blue curves lined up with the safer route her father had drawn years before. For a moment, Evelyn's face was not a CEO's face. It was a daughter's face, looking at something her father had left in the world and almost lost. Marcus moved toward her, lowering his voice. "Evelyn, please. We can protect everyone if we pause this conversation offline." She did not look away from the napkin.
No, Marcus.
Offline is where this became dangerous. She reached into the gray coat she had carried from the conference room and removed the Mercer lock. The bronze surface caught the stage lights, the cracked green tile shining like a small wound. Dana connected the overhead camera. On the screen behind them, the lock filled the wall, enormous now, every groove visible, every scratch impossible to hide. Evelyn placed Lily's napkin beside it, then looked out at the families, the board, the doctors, the reporters, and finally at Caleb, who stood with one hand protecting his daughter from the cameras and the other empty at his side. "There is one archive still sealed under my father's checksum," she said, "and this lock is the key." The hall went so still that the microphone picked up the faint click of bronze under her fingertips. The faint click of bronze under Evelyn Mercer's fingertips carried farther than the microphone should have allowed. It was not loud, not dramatic, not the sound of a door being kicked open. It was smaller, cleaner, almost gentle, and that made it worse. On the screen behind her, the Mercer lock filled the wall in magnified detail. The cracked green enamel tile, Lily's 3 blue curves beside it, the worn groove Caleb had never claimed to understand, only helped protect. Evelyn turned the lock exactly the way Lily had drawn it, and the broken-looking tile caught the stage light. A thin green line slid across the bronze face. Then the overhead display blinked once. The sealed archive opened. No one clapped. No one even whispered. A folder appeared under the old founder's mark, 2 hands cupping a small green line, and beneath it a checksum verification stamped in cold white letters. Authenticated, Dr. Harold Mercer, Founder Archive. Marcus Vane's smile held for half a second longer than it should have, like a sign left hanging after the building behind it had burned. Evelyn tapped the first file. Recording box icon appeared. For a moment, all anyone heard was soft static, the dusty breath of an old digital file waking after years in darkness. Then a man's voice filled the launch hall, older, careful, threaded with the tenderness of someone speaking to people he might never meet. "If this note is ever opened, the stabilizer path has been questioned. The long route is not inefficiency. It is mercy. Children cannot be beta tests for adult ambition." The sentence did not hit the room all at once. It moved through the chairs row by row. A physician lowered his chin. A board member's program slid from her lap to the floor with a dry flutter. A mother in the front row pressed both hands around the photograph of her son. Evelyn stood beside the podium, one hand still on the bronze lock, her face pale but steady, and Caleb saw her not as an executive then, but as a daughter hearing her father protect children from beyond the grave. Marcus reached for the microphone. "That archive is historical guidance," he said, but the words came out too dry. "It does not reflect current clinical standards." Evelyn did not argue with him. She opened the next file. Original path appeared on the left of the screen, launch path on the right. The green line in the original curved wider, slower, carrying force around the stress point. The launch version cut clean and short through the very brace Caleb had noticed. Evelyn touched the screen to bring up the access log. "Change order entered at 11:48 p.m. 6 months ago," she said. "Engineering account. Daniel Cho, inactive employee. Approval packet attached next morning." Dana, from the control booth, advanced the evidence. Service log. Supplier invoice. Beta clinic incident tickets. Compliance review. Each document appeared for only long enough to be understood, not long enough to overwhelm. The supplier invoice showed the subcontractor tied to the MS-17B stabilizer line. Caleb's old repair receipt appeared beside it, oil-stained and ordinary. A piece of paper Marcus had dismissed because it came from a mechanics folder instead of a boardroom binder. The part numbers did not match perfectly. That would have been too easy. But the subcontractor, the shortened brace note, and the failure description matched closely enough to make the room feel the pattern. Machines drifted. Reports softened the language. Responsibility moved upward until it vanished inside better words. Marcus's hand tightened around the podium edge. This is correlation, not culpability. Evelyn nodded once, almost sadly. Then let's show culpability. The final approval packet opened. Marcus Vane's digital signature sat clean beneath the phrase approved for child-facing launch language. Below it, highlighted in blue, was the marketing instruction he had allowed into the family brochure. Emphasize gentle hands, family trust, reduced anxiety. Evelyn's voice trembled for the first time, but did not break. You used my father's words to sell a version of his design he specifically warned against. Marcus looked toward the board, then toward the cameras, then toward the parents. His eyes kept searching for a softer place to land and finding none. I reviewed language, he said, not engineering. Caleb stepped forward only one pace. Lily stayed behind him, her fingers hooked around the handle of the metal lunchbox, the blue marker cap clenched in her other hand. Caleb did not take the microphone. He did not point at Marcus. He spoke into the silence the way he had spoken to machines, to frightened workers, to his daughter when the lights were off and bills were due. Language can hide a loose bolt, he said, but it doesn't tighten it. The hall went still again. Not because the sentence was clever, because it was true enough for everyone to understand. Marcus tried one more time. This man is a failed applicant with a personal grievance. Caleb turned his head slightly toward Lily, then back to the stage. I failed an interview, he said. That doesn't make the stabilizer safe. That was when the room stopped belonging to Marcus. Evelyn looked at the security supervisor standing near the side aisle. Mr. Vane is suspended pending independent investigation. His system access is revoked immediately. Preserve all files, messages, access logs, and launch approval records. The security supervisor nodded and spoke softly into his radio. No handcuffs. No shouting. No spectacle. Just the clean machinery of accountability beginning to move. Evelyn turned to the audience. The launch is stopped. All demo units are recalled from this hall. All beta families will receive written notification today. An independent safety board will review the original path, the launch path, supplier records, and every incident ticket. No child-facing product leaves this company until field failure review is complete. For several seconds, no one reacted. The projector hummed. A phone vibrated somewhere in the second row and went unanswered. The bronze lock sat open beneath the camera, larger than all of them on the screen behind Evelyn. Its cracked green tile no longer looking broken, but purposeful. Marcus stepped back from the podium. His pen slipped from his folder, struck the stage, and rolled once before stopping near his shoe. He looked down at it as if he did not recognize small things anymore. Caleb felt Lily's hand find his. She whispered, "Daddy, did I do bad?" He crouched slightly, shielding her from the nearest camera with his shoulder. "No, sweetheart," he said. "You solved a shape. Adults made the choice." That sentence finished what the evidence had begun. A murmur did not rise. Applause did not save anyone from the weight of what they had seen. The board members could not speak. The parents could not look away. The executives who had smiled at Caleb's cuffs stared at the old repair receipt on the screen as if it had grown teeth. And Evelyn Mercer, standing beside her father's open lock, chose the truth over the launch, children over applause, and justice over the comfort of a closed door. The room went silent, completely silent, the kind of silence that does not mean emptiness, but recognition. Yet as Caleb held his daughter's hand in that bright public stillness, he knew the hardest question had only just arrived. Now that the world finally saw them, what would he choose to do with the power of being believed?